Hey, welcome to My Mama Summer. My name is Aimee Devlin. I'm an unconventional millennial mother living abroad, building a business and raising children while stepping into who she's meant to be. This podcast is an audio version of my newsletter, which you can find at mymamasummer.com. The episodes are short, wholehearted reflections of my life as a mother, business owner, and everyday human committed to being the best she can be. Pop in your headphones, grab a cuppa and a cookie, and take this time to just be with me. My daughter is 3. You could put me in the crunchy mum box, should you want to label me that way. The conventions of unconventional, modern millennial motherhood tell me I should probably homeschool, but I don't. And in this episode, I share why. The pendulum has swung greatly from the expectation we should send our kids to school to the expectation that if we're, quote, alternative, we should be homeschooling or worldschooling or even perhaps radically unschooling our children. John Taylor Gatto, a staunch critic of compulsory schooling, who was also a former New York State Teacher of the Year and author of Dumbing Us Down, gets us thinking twice about the conventional route when he says, and I quote, "Is there an idea more radical in the history of the human race than turning your children over to total strangers whom you know nothing about and having those strangers work on your child's mind out of your sight for a period of 12 years? Could there be a more radical idea than that?" And so does Dana Martin, creator of Radical Unschooling, who says, "We were raised in an era where the parental role was focused on obedience and control. As children, we were trained to believe that life is about taking orders, which in essence only met the needs of the adults in our lives. Unschooling has a foundation of trust in children that is virtually unheard of in our culture because most of us were never trusted as children ourselves." And so in this era of reform, rebellion, and oftentimes outright madness, why not keep our kids home from the dangers of school and let them grow alongside us at home? It sounds like a legitimately beautiful idea for most, but there's more to the conversation. And even a man as outspoken as John Taylor Gatto thought so. When traveling the USA as a public speaker on school reform, Gatto learned a revelation of what might be possible. Childhood education is an art. If you attended public or private school, you wouldn't know that. You were probably raised to be an obedient slave destined for the workforce and taught that the main tenet of life was choosing a vocation you'd be tied to for the rest of your life. And you felt the immense burden of choosing wisely. But there's a middle ground between letting the state raise your child and letting your child raise themselves. And I feel a call to speak loudly about this because neither option I mentioned is preferable. They're unfavorable extremes of a spectrum. Children are our future, and raising them wholly requires knowing what's available for us to do that. Educating a child wholly on all levels of their being requires immense will, feeling, thinking, dedication, and intention. And as a mother who is also a businesswoman, wife, friend, daughter, cook, and all of the other roles that come with being a mother, it's impossible for me to place the intention my daughter deserves on being her educator too. Despite being someone who is dedicated to health, self-reflection, personal growth, self-development, I'm not the right person for the job, and I'm not afraid to say that. I love my daughter. I'm an incredible mother, and I simply can't provide the rhythm and the reverence my daughter needs to thrive. This is why she attends a small community Waldorf school where the continuous self-development of the adult forms the basis of kindergarten life. And here's another quote from John Taylor Gatto in the foreword of a book called Understanding Waldorf Education. He says, "The Steiner philosophy that drives Waldorf education is a philosophy in which human possibility is seen as infinite. Waldorf recognizes the genius in all and sets out quite deliberately to coax the muscles of that genius into play in a far different fashion than the pedagogical orthodoxy. If you've heard of Rudolf Steiner and his educational approach known as Steiner-Waldorf education, or perhaps either Steiner or Waldorf in your country, you may have heard that the first 7 years of life are known as the stage of imitation. And what does he or she imitate? Everything. If you have a child, you know this. You have probably noticed most strikingly when you let an F-bomb drop and it drips out of your child's mouth a few days later, laced with joy and innocence in front of a complete stranger. Or when you slip up as your anger arises one day and you offer a loud "no," which later comes to bite you in the ass via a tiny mimic. Rahima Baldwin says the little child up to the age of 7, up to the change of teeth, is essentially imitative. He learns by doing what he sees being done around him. Fundamentally, all activities of the child's early years are imitations. Every action, sight, sound, emotion, or other sense impression is absorbed into the child's inner being. And yes, I just said every. All parents know how capable children are of imitation. So if we are to educate them, we must be worthy of imitation. We must set the example we want our children to follow. Now, if like me, you want your child to grow modeling and valuing love, respect, curiosity, dignity, wonder, and warmth, they need to imitate that from a worthy example. Homeschoolers are right in that the public schooling system doesn't offer that opportunity. But am I worthy of imitation at all hours of the day? I do model these values at home, but I don't provide an environment I deem intentional enough for my child to be immersed in all day, every day. There are examples who are more worthy of imitation than I am for reasons to follow. Though I live my life constantly striving to be, quote, worthy of imitation, I am also a wife. I'm an online business owner. If you think about the typical entrepreneur, they're not worthy of imitation. Just think about all the time that I spend in front of the computer, sometimes 4 hours a day. And that is not something to be modeled. It's not even something a small child can understand. So if we're to homeschool, it requires us to ask ourselves, am I worthy of imitation? When we consider that, quote, everything that is done in a child's presence is transformed into their childish organism, into spirit, soul, and body, if we're homeschooling, we must ask ourselves, is my home the right environment? Does it nourish my child's senses? Am I, as their guide, worthy of imitation? Now, if you're feeling pressure, guilt, or dismay listening to my words and you want to shout at me for not understanding how challenging modern parenthood can be, please hold up. We are definitely on the same team. I want you to crush it too. But are the pressures of modern society too great to be able to be everything to everyone, including teacher to our children? If you're thinking, nice one, Aimee, sure, I'm worthy of imitation all the time while I'm relentlessly clothing, feeding, guiding, and educating my child, and if you don't sense the sarcasm here, it's definitely there, then we're on the same page. I'm going to be bold and honest here and say that I believe it's impossible for you as a parent to be, do, or embody all those things, which is why I'm sharing this. You don't have to be. I know I can't spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week being that for my daughter. I don't want to be all those things to my daughter. How am I single-handedly supposed to plan the day to include purposeful activities and play that follow a rhythm, including the in and the out breath, song and rhyme, movement, nap or rest time, nourishing food, outdoor adventures, all of which are an example that my child can imitate, whilst being thoughtful, warm, and deliberate with my gestures and speech, remaining calm and present, whilst also running a home and a business and taking care of myself. This is what is being asked of me if I was to homeschool. I'm not exaggerating when I say I wouldn't survive. As I've shared in previous episodes, my plate is already overflowing and my cup is pretty empty, even though I'm in the process of attempting to fill it. And if you want me to add the role of educator on top of that pile, something has to give. Thankfully, what I described is the role of the Waldorf kindergarten teacher. According to Steiner, this is the constructive way for children to learn. And I believe this wholeheartedly, having seen children being taught in this environment. The best way to teach young children is to show them, to be the example, to provide a deliberate and intentional example worthy of imitation. And it's not a role to be taken lightly. Here's another beautiful quote from Rahima, who says, "Striving to be models worthy of imitation with renewed resolve rather than guilt," that's an important caveat, "is the hardest and the most valuable work of parents, and it has the most benefit for our children. To help frazzled parents replenish their energy, Steiner suggests sleep, meditation, and artistic activity." So what Steiner is saying is that at all times, parents should strive to be models worthy of imitation. And at the same time, he recognizes that that in itself is a challenging task. And as alternative or unconventional parents who are likely already committed to a path of personal growth and inner development, what better question to keep us on track than, am I worthy of imitation? What a beautiful sentence to be guided by every day we wake up. As Chinyilu Kun says, every moment of every day, our children are watching us and imitating what we do, what we say, as well as how we show up for them. Adults are the environment, the weather, so to speak, and the child experiences all of it. Young children cannot help but to take it all in because they are like sponges. At her school, my daughter spends her time immersed in a mindfully created environment that engages her imagination and nurtures her senses without overstimulating her. Each morning, she is ecstatic to go to school. She's eager to imitate, and she thrives from spending her time there. And I'm not sure I could say the same if I were her teacher. Steiner says what the human being sees, what is poured into his environment, becomes a force in him. In accordance with it, he forms himself. Something else that's really important in this realm in early childhood education is reverence. And another beautiful quote from Steiner says, "Receive the child in reverence, educate them in love, and let them go forth in freedom." And this beautifully describes the 7-year cycles that a child undergoes throughout their Waldorf education. So when my daughter enters her school, she's received in reverence. She's welcomed warmly. She's seen for all her unique human qualities, treated as an individual. Her teachers are looking for her particular characteristics, and she spends her day in a highly curated environment. It's not just another part of her day at home with mum and dad. How am I, as my daughter's mother, supposed to receive my child with reverence? Each morning, after I've spent the night co-sleeping, breastfeeding, or waking up with either a request for snacks or a dreamtime kick in the face. Let's take last night, for instance. We had a beautiful weekend with friends and got home later than normal. We had our shower, a little snack before bed, and I thought she'd sleep beautifully after having spent the entire weekend running around like a 3-year-old does. But to my dismay, she was on my boob feeding for almost the entire night. And I thought those nights would be over a long time ago, but here we are, and I still enjoy them. I know I'll look back on this time fondly. And I'm thinking, why does she want so much booby tonight? But my consciousness is still half inhabiting the land of dreams. My frontal lobe is completely off the planet. So it took me a long time to realize, holy shit, she's hungry. So I go downstairs at about 3 a.m. I peel an apple, I chop up some dates, bring it upstairs, and then at 3 a.m. we're having a picnic on the bed with each other. And so at the time I'm like, I'm going to look back on this fondly, but my eyes are bleeding in the morning, and now I'm my child's middle of the night snack bitch. I've barely slept. She's been on me the entire night, sucking on me, and I've been laying on my side, twisted like a pretzel. So when I wake up, I'm so thirsty, and then I have to go about the day as normal. Doesn't stop for me. I have to choose clothes. I have to make breakfast, sing songs, make craft, all before she heads off to her school. If I was homeschooling her, there would be no opportunity for me to have a break. There would have been no ability for me to receive her in reverence because it's just never ending. And my mum friends all agree, mum life never ends. If we add homeschooling on top of that, what gives? Is it intentional parenting, her education, self-reflection, food preparation, extracurricular activities, my self-care? Is it my relationship? Something has to give because it's just too much load. And if I was homeschooling, to adapt, perhaps I'd expect my child to fit into the rhythm of my day, lug them around the shops with me, put a movie on while I work, or buy some homeschooling curriculum books and ask my kids to fill them out while I cook. None of these activities allow me to be worthy of imitation. And that's really important for me. When we're sleeping with, breastfeeding, feeding, nurturing, loving and guiding a child, I question if it's useful to add educator to that list. And the answer I'm led to is that it's just too much. I recognize that it's just not possible, viable, or useful for me to do that. So I partner with a collection of people who are trained to do that, people whom are worthy of imitation, who lead by example, who teach her new songs each week that change as the seasons do, who cook healthy lunch and clean up together, who lead with positive direction, encourage reverence for the earth, strengthen her will, inspire play, take her on adventures in nature, tell her magical stories off by heart that ignite her imagination and help her rest and fall into a rhythm. If I'm to do all these things for my child every day, plus all the other things that I'm supposed to do, something has to give. And because of my dedication to mother my child with love and intention, what gives will likely be me. There is a lot of pressure on the, quote, crunchy mum. She has to make food from scratch, wear floral dresses, milk her cows, speak with love and grace, service her husband, and free birth her children, all while sharing it on Instagram. The burden is real. We're not just mothering for our family anymore. We're mothering for the internet too. The social media highlight reel gives us expectations which are often crushed when we try and do it all. Even without homeschooling my daughter, I still don't have enough time and energy in the day to show up and do all the things I need to do. As I've previously shared, the notion of self-care is kryptonite for me because I chose to drop that to the bottom of the Aimee pile and I'm fighting to get it back. It wasn't intentional. I loved having a fit body, styled hair and smooth legs. But when I compare those things to showing up for my daughter, and when I have a limited amount of hours to squeeze it all in, that all fell by the wayside. When I see mothers who still work out, I wonder, what was it that they let go? I believe every modern mother has to make that choice. Anyone who tells you otherwise has the support network we all dream of. Some women let their body go. Some let their nutrition go. Some let their intimacy with their husband go. Some let the screen parent for them. It's just what's required of the modern mother. It's challenging to fit in all of those things into our daily rhythm. Add to that the need to guide our children with love and transition them into a new activity when all we want to do is take a nap or time out. It's a big load. It's impossible to be everything to everyone all the time. And that's a sentence I need to repeat in my mind. When we put that load on ourselves, we can't be the best that we need to be. I simply cannot be all of those things at once. If I'm trying to do it all, I can't be the best version of me for myself, for my child, for my husband, and for my friends. And I know from experience that if I try and carry the full load myself, I am just going to fall over and need to take a break. If I was homeschooling my children, this would mean they wouldn't have anyone guiding or leading them, which results in them acting out because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. When they, quote, act out, they're looking for leadership, something to imitate. They, especially children from the ages of 0 to 7, need an example to follow. So if we're overloaded and need to take a break, our children are like, oh, what do I do now? Next minute, they're running around like maniacs, fighting, shouting, or hitting each other. And it's because they don't have any leadership. Being everything to everyone just doesn't work, in my view and in my personal experience. So this is why I don't homeschool. I'm sure in some perfect world out there is a mother who is able to do all of those things for her children, but I'm honest and real, and that mother isn't me. So in this era of my life, I choose to educate my daughter via Waldorf education. She loves it. I love it. And it allows me to hand back that archetype that I didn't ask for and that I held on to for so long, which is the archetype of the martyr. So many mothers have become martyrs because of what is expected of us in modern motherhood. And although I choose tools from different boxes and may be labeled in many different ways through the choices that I make, I'm forging my own path ahead and choosing the tools that work for me despite the conventions, despite the guilt that is handed down to us, despite what we are, quote, supposed to be. I'm creating traditions and experiences for myself and my family that suit us, first and foremost. And for us, that means not homeschooling in this era of our life. I'm so curious whether you homeschool, send your children to public school or alternative education, what your experience has been of carrying the load. Whether you do feel it's possible for us mothers to carry it all. I'm also curious about what you have let slide in your life. Because I believe, as I said before, that every mother has to let something slide. And it's really easy to get caught up thinking that other mothers on Instagram or Facebook or other areas of the internet have it all figured out. They don't. Nobody does. Let's just be real and let's support one another to live our own paths and to build a world for our children that allows them to be as whole as they can be. If you enjoyed this episode and like reading as much as you do listening, I would love to welcome you as another subscriber to my newsletter. Head on over to mymamasummer.com to subscribe and let me know what you loved most about this episode. I love hearing your feedback. It's my favorite part of sharing what's on my heart. I'll see you over there. Have a beautiful day.